Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is FATMAWATI.P with student ID B1B125097. I am a student at Halu Oleo University, majoring in management and from the Management International class. So in this video presentation, I will discuss an important topics in economics, namely inflation. Specifically, I will focus on two main types of inflation, namely demand pull inflation and cost-push inflation. Inflation is a common economic problem that affects purchasing power, business activity, and overall economic stability, making it an important concept to understand in both national and global contexts. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. So, demand pull inflation occurs when aggregate demand increases faster than aggregate supply. This usually happens during periods of economic growth when consumption, investment, or government spending rise. When producers cannot increase output quickly enough, prices begin to rise. There's four main concepts of demand pull inflation. The first one is increase in consumer spending, higher government expenditure, increased investment, and expansionary monetary policy. As you can see in this slide, it's talk about the example of demand pull inflation. So if the government increases infrastructure spending and households simultaneously increase consumption due to higher income, total demand rises. When firms can immediately increase production, prices rise. In this diagram, aggregate demand shifts to the right from aggregate demand 1 to aggregate demand 2. Aggregate supply remains constant, causing the price level to increase from price 1 to price 2. At the same time, output increased from quantity 1 to quantity 2. Okay, let's move on to cost push inflation. So, cost-push inflation occurs when production costs increase, forcing firms to raise prices. As a result, price increase even though demand remains unchanged. There's four main concepts of cost-push inflation. The first one is increase in wage. The second one is increase in raw material prices, include oil, gas, and food. The third one is currency depreciation or important inflation. And the last one is higher taxes on production. So this is the example of cost push inflation. When global oil prices rise sharply, transportation and production costs increased. Firms pass this cost on to consumers through higher prices. As you can see in this diagram, aggregate supply shifts to the left from aggregate supply 1 to aggregate supply 2. And this shift raises the price from price 1 to price 2, but reduce output from quantity 1 to quantity 2. This situation can lead to stagflation, which means high inflation and low economic growth. To compare the two types of inflation, demand pull inflation is driven by excessive demand. In contrast, cost push inflation is caused by rising production cost. Understanding this difference helps policymakers choose the right economic policy. Okay, the next slide is talking about the multiplier effect. So the multiplier effect explains how an initial change in spending can lead to a larger change in national income. This happens because one person's spending becomes another person's income. The size of these effects depends on the marginal propensity to consume or MPC. So this slide also shows an example of multiplier effect calculation. With an MPC of 0.8, we calculate the multiplier and then measure the impact of investment and tax change. As shown in the image, small policy change the cause a much larger change in gross domestic product. So this is the solution. At the first step, you need to calculate the consumption multiplier. The formula of consumption multiplier is 1 and 1 divided by 1 minus MPC. MPC stands for 0.8 and consumption multiplier is stand for 1 equals 5. The step 2 is calculate the investment multiplier. The formula is change in GDP equals investment multiplier multiply delta I. Change in GDP equals 5 multiply $200 million equals $1,000 million. And the last step is calculate the tax multiplier. The formula of tax multiplier is negative MPC divided by 1 negative MPC equals 1 and 4 negative 4. So change in GDP equals negative 4 multiply negative $100 million equals $400 million. So overall change in GDP equals $1,000 million plus $400 million equals $1,400 million. Overall change in GDP equals $1,400 million. In conclusion, inflation is a continuous increase in the general price level. Demand pull inflation is caused by excessive demand, while cost push inflation results from rising production cost. The multiplier effect shows how fiscal policy strongly influences national income, and therefore effective economic policies are essential for price stability and sustainable growth. So that concludes my presentation on demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and the multiplier effect. I hope this presentation has helped clarify how inflation occurs and how economic policies affect national income. I'm sorry if there's a mistake. Thank you very much for your attention. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.